There's a whole lot of research coming out more and more and more of the power of sleep, how important it is to get a good night's sleep, consistency of sleep.
Well, I can remember back when I was in corporate selling software, like the times where I had to pull an all-nighter, how impressed my boss was. I can't believe you're emailing me at 3 a.m. You're amazing, blah, blah, blah. And, it reinforces that, oh, yeah, I'm great because I'm killing myself.
Right. This strange phenomenon about the older you get, the less sleep you need for the most part.
I so want that to prove out.
I don't think
It's not working for me.
It doesn't work for me either. Hi, I'm Michael Redmond.
And I'm Kathryn Redmond.
And today we're going to talk about the whole concept of rest and the power of it and the rhythms of it. As we talk about resting today and that whole process of the work and rest cycle and all of that kind of stuff, I thought it would be really important for us to talk about because of how powerful that is in the whole cycle. It's amazing how often people that we talk to, leaders, they don't have a concept of rest or a rest cycle. How would you describe, after all these years of us talking about things, what rest cycles are and the importance of rest?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's part of the cycles end up being daily, weekly, and then potentially monthly, quarterly, and annually. I think there are things to choose in rest that are cyclical. So there's the maintenance, and then there's the sort of decisions to do longer term types of rest. But it's amazing how many people don't even have the daily, weekly rhythm, let alone any intention or thought towards how do I really rest, right?
Well, let's talk about the power of rest. And let's start with sleep. There's a whole lot of research coming out more and more and more of the power of sleep, how important it is to get a good night's sleep, consistency of sleep. Matter of fact, the woman who started, oh golly, what's her name? She started one of the online presses, one of the online newspapers several years ago.
Ariana Huffington.
Yeah.
I'm here to help.
Bam.
That
was impressive.
Post. Thank you. Every once in a while, it's just right there. That's usually your skill, but
yeah, no, that was good. So Ariana, when she sold the Huffington Post and she started her new company, she was already starting to become a huge advocate of the power of sleep and the need for sleep. And she was realizing, I mean, here's a woman who was very powerful, very wealthy, very successful with the Huffington Post and many things like that, that she was pushing this whole idea of, well, wait a minute, we haven't always been doing it right. We need to make sure sleep, because she was talking about on a regular basis just how it was lauded or praised. It was almost a badge of honor, especially in corporate America, how hard you worked and how little you slept. I only got 3 hours of sleep last night. Look what I'm accomplishing.
Well, I can remember back when I was in corporate selling software, like the times where I had to pull an all-nighter, how impressed my boss was. I can't believe you're emailing me at 3 a.m. You're amazing, blah, blah, blah. And, it reinforces that, oh, yeah, I'm great because I'm killing myself.
Right. You're totally in.
I'm killing myself,
totally
and I'm great.
for the company. It's
right?
Great, and everything else.
You know what? I prioritize you above my life and my family. Well done, me.
Well, and there's the difference between what does it look like to be successful in the old days of how much you sacrificed yourself and everything else in the family. The idea of what hard work was. I think there's a bit of an extreme on what hard work is and how much we need and what we need. The fact that I think we've gone so far to the other side, trying to find the happy medium. And
the 4-hour work week, as opposed to 4 a.m.
So we have a good night's sleep that's important and critical. Somewhere between, depending on the research, but a lot of it seems to be between 7 and 9 hours.
Yeah, depending on how you put together and all the different pieces.
Now, there's some folks that are doing 6 hours.
Yep.
Definitely, it was this strange phenomenon about the older you get, the less sleep you need for the most part.
I so want that to prove out.
I don't think that
it's not working for me.
It doesn't work for me either. I know that the ideal amount of sleep for me is 7.5 hours. The preferred sleep is more like 9 or 10.
Yep.
And if I can get that, I'm really happy. But I know that if I need to move faster and everything else, 7.5 hours. 8. Strangely enough, I don't like 8 hours, as you know. And I don't prefer 7 hours. It's
Half hour
part of
mark.
it is there's circadian rhythms and the 90-minute cycles and stuff like that. I just found over testing over the years that that's a thing.
Yeah. Well, and the hardest part even for me in that, even in this season, like I know those things, but I don't have the consistency. So like my workout schedule messes with my brain because I get up early in the morning 3 or 4 days a week, but then the other ones I'm not making those adjustments. So I'm still not going to bed early enough and I'm not getting up when I should on the days that I don't have to. And
Right.
so all those things affect, right? The consistency, right? So those are continued like I know, but I have to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only way I solve that is I don't go work out.
Well, that is your solution.
That's my solution at the moment.
I don't choose that
It's
solution.
probably not the best
Nah, it
solution,
may
and
not be.
I need to add.
We're trading off
Well,
different.
and I try and do light exercise and different things other times of the day, but trying to fit it in isn't always easy. But this isn't rest. This isn't about exercise. It's about rest. Before we go any farther, because we start with the night rest and why that's important, let's talk about what happens when you don't get enough rest, and then let's go on to the weekly cycle and then the other cycles of rest. So I love the way Bob Beal puts it in some of his stuff. Who anybody who doesn't know who Bob Beal is, he's still alive, but he's in his 80s. He's been a business consultant for and counselor and coach for I don't know 50 years.
And he spells Bob with 2 B's, which BOBB. I mean,
Yeah,
that's makes him stand out right there.
he stands
He's
out.
not just any Bob. He's
He,
a Bob with 2 B's
he's
or 3 B's, I guess, when you think about the first
Bob
one and the
Beal.
last 2. And 4 B's. He's got so many B's.
No, in his name, Bob, there's only 3 B's. There's not 4.
No, he spells it BOBB.
That's 3 B's.
And then there's a Beal.
Oh, and you're counting his last name now too.
Well, you just did.
All right.
So many B's.
Okay, so
Beal.
I like the way he articulates it. And he says it like this: we know that we're not optimal when we don't get enough rest, and we don't get a consistent rhythm of rest.
Yep.
That's also important. But here's the way he talks about it. He says there's 3 enemies of great leadership, and they are fog, fatigue, and flirtations.
I do love this.
So fog, because even a brand new Ferrari Testarossa, hopefully I said that right, can only go about 2 miles an hour safely in a dense fog.
Mm-hmm.
With a foggy brain, you can't begin to realize your natural horsepower. The quicker you clear your head, the quicker you can be at full throttle mentally.
There you go.
So there's a fog that happens for us. And I've met enough leaders where they don't say there's a fog because they've been in a fog so long.
Yeah.
It's normal. So now they start to base what is in or out of the fog by less fog or more fog, but never out of the fog.
Well, and I think, it's very
It's
real.
like they live in Portland.
Yeah. Like we're prepping to go on holiday.
Right.
And so there's just like 155 things to do, as always, when you're trying to make sure that all the ducks are in a row and everybody's taken care of before you leave. But I realized yesterday, I just had one of those moments where it was like, I'm going from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. I'm not taking any breaks. And I hit a place where it's like, I just need to stop. I need to stand up. I need to take a walk. I need to breathe because all the things that should be easy are getting hard. That's part of how I identify when I'm in a fog. Like, this shouldn't be that difficult. And yet it took me 15 minutes to find something that, maybe yesterday when I wasn't foggy, I could have found in 30 seconds.
Right.
Right. So
Absolutely.
that fog is like that is a huge deal.
Okay. The second one is fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
which we see also. So fatigue, this is how I put it. According to the late great Green Bay Packers coach, Vince Lombardi, fatigue makes cowards of us all. I like that. Cowards of us all.
Oh, golly.
It also turns us introspective and negative. Fatigue warps our objectivity and decision making. Avoid making critical decisions when fatigued. And whenever a person says, I'm really tired, start listening and encouraging. If you try and sell or convince a fatigued person, you'll only overwhelm and alienate them.
There's a lot in that.
There's a lot in that.
That's about 5 podcasts. Let's come back to that.
But that whole idea of the fatigue can really mess with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it can be the death of folks. There are endurance races and endurance events and endurance things that need to happen for work. Mm-hmm. So you find that endurance races, not only marathons, but the the ultra marathons, the things that are 50 miles and
Mhm.
or the 100-mile races in a day or something like that for biking, the centurions and stuff. Those are you've got these things where it's the endurance is part of it built into the whole test.
Mhm.
And when there are races and stuff like that, if you're not a professional and making money at it, then this is just a personal test of
Mhm.
I like to do this activity and I'm trying to push myself to see
Can
how
I
much
dig deep enough to
yeah,
get this
and
done?
can I do it and not make mistakes?
Mhm.
Well, when you have folks that are doing stuff like sailing across the Atlantic in a boat by themselves,
Mm.
or you've got a small crew, like some friends of ours, they were moving their sailboat from Mexico into the United States a few years back. There was 4 of them on crew. One of them had back problems. The captain had back problems. And so 2 of our friends went on it to help out. But I've heard enough of the stories
Mm.
where they've been in places where they were the storm a really bad storm was coming in, they had to sail for 48 to 72 hours
Mhm.
without sleeping. There's all this stuff going on. The waves are big. There's an endurance, and sleep starts to fog your ability to think. That fatigue starts to. So those are all things like I've gotten in a situation where we've got to get the ship, the sailboat moving,
Mhm.
or we're going to be in even worse trouble.
Right.
We've got to. I've desired to do a race or something for fun, but then there's this somehow in work, in running a company, in being a leader. Again, it's this 4 hours a night I slept and I'm amazing or whatever. Somehow there's this idea that it's okay to be in a place where you're fatigued and you're going along. You're supposed to be able to make decisions and life threatening decisions or major decisions to the company.
Mhm.
Unless you are in one of those places where that's a natural thing, this fatigue thing becomes very dangerous. It becomes dangerous in the races or the sailing or whatever. But you're not in the average person in a business isn't their job isn't to test to see how much the fatigue they can put up with and still make decisions.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of leaders out there they are living life fatigued, right? We talk about the burnout stages and they're living at stage 3. They haven't quite fallen off the edge, but they're
Yeah.
living in that.
And for those of you who haven't heard, there's fourth stages of burnout.
Yeah.
So 3 is right next to I'm on the couch for 6 months.
Yes. I've given up. My body is done. My adrenals have said no more.
Yes.
But they're living in that, stage 2, early stage 3, or even extended stage 3 burnout on a regular basis. And what happens is, a lot of times, especially if we're problem solving and there's crises and there's challenges, those things are cumulative.
Yeah.
And if we're not taking some time to process those things, then they just continue to accumulate. And that's part of the challenge too, because we're so many people are living in this fog and fatigue based on the fact that they're not owning the build,
Yeah.
right? They're like, "Well, that's in the past, it's done." But did you deal with it? I mean, to take COVID. Like, okay, it was a lot of implications, right? So did are you that was kind of collective for everyone. Are we okay? And I think we assume that we just move through things really, really fast and everybody's going to be okay. And you know what? That was then, this is now. But how well are you actually processing even the difficulties that you have already been through as you're facing new difficulties?
Yeah. And the part that he mentions about convincing somebody, forget sales and stuff. Let's talk about the people you have to lead.
Mhm.
When you have people making poor decisions or they make a mistake or they just need a direction change. They need to be changed a few degrees to the left or to the right. And you have to help them think through that. When you're fatigued,
Mhm.
when they're fatigued, they're not going to hear anything easily for a change. They're just going to get frustrated. When you're fatigued and you run into those problems with your folks, then your ability to have patience and to figure out how to navigate those waters so that you can come up with a way that helps to communicate.
Mhm.
Because usually they're doing it because it's not because they're trying to be lazy. They're doing it because it makes the most sense to them. That's the most logical thing to them.
Yeah.
And so helping walk through that. The
Well,
third
and before you move on,
yeah,
I mean, I
okay.
think the other thing that is in that definition that he talked about is this sense of when you are fatigued, everything feels negative,
Mm,
right? You're easily overwhelmed.
yeah,
The sky is falling.
yeah,
Like, anything that hits you feels like the end of the world, right? And so if that's the cycle you're in, that is a hard place to make decisions out of. And it's a hard place to lead out of because everything feels bigger and worse
yeah.
than it actually is if you're able to.
Well, in our personal strategy, oftentimes when we're at that place and everything's negative, is we say, "I need to get to bed
Yes.
because new mercies are in the morning."
Exactly.
It almost always looks better in the morning,
Mhm.
and for us, new mercies is code for I need new mercies, which means I'm going to bed now because
Okay.
I'm
I have had
maxed
enough.
out. I've had enough.
I can't take it anymore, I'm going to bed.
Yes.
Yes, and
Okay.
it's not an escape, it's a
Okay.
it's a
So the third one
progression.
then is flirtations, where you start
Mhm.
to make decisions
Oh, yeah.
based on, I think I can get close to that. I can make this decision, and your ability to understand the what's a wise decision, what's not a wise decision, or the margin that
Mhm.
you actually can successfully handle without um, putting in risk. For me, as a kid, a teenager, driving on dirt roads and different things like that, and not sure how close you can get to the edge of the dirt road without it giving way or your tire slipping or something like
Mhm.
that. And you get into this situation where you're like, you overestimate what's safe, or you're willing to take risks more. You're like, I think it'll be okay. The worst part is when you are tired and when you're tired, you physically won't walk a straight line as much. You can look at somebody's gait and go,
Mhm.
you're exhausted. You just kind of, mm, you're acting a little drunk, even though I know you're not drunk.
Yeah.
When you're that flirtation and that tiredness, I've noticed that you and I, and leaders we work with, their decision making, their ability to assess a situation and discern the right strategic thing to do and then actually implement that that gets crooked. It's almost
Mhm.
like this mental crooked line. It's like you start to sway and stagger, and those things can be super dangerous. And that's where people do dumb things.
Yeah.
There is a reason why many people have always said for centuries, maybe millennia, actually millennia because it's written down, that being out late at night after working all day or doing things all day and stuff usually is people who are getting into trouble.
There's nothing good to be had
There's
after
nothing good,
11 p.m. or something,
you
right?
know. And
No
personally,
good decisions get made after 11
I
at
would
night.
say more problems I had as a teenager happened after 11 or 12 o'clock at night
Mhm.
than happened at 4 in the afternoon.
Yep, because your defenses are down,
And I'm just
your
like,
decision
why did
making
you make that
skills.
decision, Michael? Well, it seemed
I
like
was
a good
just,
thing at the time,
I was tired.
and I wanted it.
I wanted
I
it.
wanted it. So you've got those three things that are problems when we are not getting the rest we need. We're not getting the restoration we need. So we have this sleep rest that we need every night.
Mhm.
One of the things that we talk about is Sabbath.
Yep.
And that's for every week, one day a week going, I'm not going to work. We're not going to work at the office. We're not going to grind or do a bunch of chores at home or anything like that. It's a day where we need that day a week of rest. And it really sets
Mhm.
us up for lots of things. It allows us to mentally rest, allows us to have fun as a family. The danger for us is when we put in too much fun
Mm.
into a day of rest. When when the third day at Disneyland is no longer restful. Fun, but no longer restful. And so trying to figure out what that once a week
Yeah.
is super critical.
Yeah. It is, and it is a discipline. It's it's a choice to make because there's always stuff that can happen, right? You always have things that can be done. The to-do list is eternal. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
So really learning to prioritize what matters more, and ultimately that mental health, that decision to say, you know what, I'm going to say yes to this. And that means saying no to a whole bunch of things. But I'm going to say yes to this. And this being the choice to rest and rejuvenate and allow your brain to just stop having to do everything all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I would say there's an argument to be made that those are days where you probably shouldn't be on a whole bunch of social media and news channels,
Yeah.
right? Because that constant feed, that constant attention, it keeps us. I heard a guy talking about kind of the three different levels of who we are as people.
Okay.
So there's the shallows, which is really where like all of the distraction happens, all of the things are coming at us all the time, and we're just, and a lot of people are living kind of right there, right?
And
They're
that's
just
where the
responding to
song is
the Bradley Cooper, Lady
shallows.
Gaga. Yeah, you're
Yes.
gonna
Okay.
insert
All
that
right.
now.
All right.
Sha-la-la-la. Okay,
All right.
so there's the shallows, there's the midlands, and the midlands are that place in you where they're the true concerns, right? About your family, your parents, your career, all the things that are like these are the things that keep you awake at night, right? That you're really going, I'm concerned about this. I'm worried about that, right? That's kind of the Midlands. And then there's this deeper place, which is really where ultimately rest can come from,
Okay.
which is a deeper place of just like what's actually really important when I gain perspective, when I pull back, when I step into nature and I consider the fact that that bird over there is not working for a living and everything is provided for him. How does that type of thing biblically or consider
Right.
consider the birds, consider the flowers, all of the worry and anxiety, all of the things that cause us not to rest or not to choose rest can begin to chill out when we actually go a little deeper. We choose rest and we expose ourselves to beauty and art and the kinds of things that just refresh our souls, right? Like
Yeah.
they make us see
Absolutely.
that there's a bigger picture and that the things that are clouding our minds don't necessarily have to be where we live every single moment.
Yeah.
We're able to let go a little bit.
Well, and rest is an interesting thing because rest, the sleep, we started with sleep. That's the most obvious.
Mhm.
Having a pattern in your week, one day a week, where you actually don't have to put a lot of requirements on yourself physically, mentally, emotionally,
Yep.
then you get into this place where you start asking the questions of, okay, how do I rest mentally? How do I rest physically? What does that look like?
Mhm.
Because people who are exercising in sports physiology, we talk about the idea that muscles actually cannot grow if you work the same muscle group every day. You've got to have a
Mhm.
rest period. And because most of the growth that happens in a muscle happens somewhere around the 24-hour mark, in that range, after you've worked and stressed the muscle, but it only grows if the muscle's at rest.
Mm.
If the muscle is active, it comes in, the receptors go, "Is it rest? Can we do the work? No, it's busy. Okay." And then they go away
Hmm.
and like, check, we can't do any work here. And they don't even say we'll come back. They just are done and move
I'm
on,
out.
next house. And so that whole muscle, so that what we've learned, we're looking at the physiology of the body, we start to apply in the brain too. We see that in the brain, if you don't get good enough sleep at night, long enough spurts at night where you get into REM, REM sleep and all this kind of stuff. Staying REM always reminds me of the band,
I know. I know. Too. We're very
very old
80s.
band. And so thinking about that, what happens that they've learned is the brain actually shrinks and all the little crevices in between the cells and everything else actually open up, and the cerebral spinal fluid comes in and washes out, because the cells there have in the brain have a different way of cleaning out the waste product that the cells make, because everything that's alive makes waste. We have that in the rest of the body. We have a different system, but in the brain, the cerebral spinal fluid's there. So there's this thing where it's like, well, I'm foggy. Well, yeah, because what's happening is there's a buildup of toxins.
Mm.
and these toxins have to be cleaned out. But when it comes to just our basic mental thought, to really think strategically, I think one last thing I really want to hit on this is this idea that when we're talking about good judgment and the assessment we use for good judgment, there's this whole process of being able to have the time and the space to actually think strategically, which think about what's going to happen in the future, go through, ponder the situations and everything else. And it requires you to actually get away and think. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, people have different ways of doing that. I remember once a long time ago, you created this graphic for me that said pen, paper, perspective, right?
Mm.
When I can come away and do what I do, which is write, journal, right? There's something powerful for me about getting what's happening in my head out on paper because then I see it in black and white and I'm like, oh, that's dumb.
Mm.
We do not need to be thinking that
Yeah.
or doing that. And I think what you're hitting on is how powerful it is to pull away with the intention of just letting yourself think, just letting yourself breathe, just letting yourself find just some creative energy again that cannot happen if we're just going hard at it all the time. So I do that in that way. But what you've been doing, I think you can speak better, obviously, than I can to how powerful it has been for you to have that space in your world where suddenly you're able to be strategic and creative and excited about the potential of the future because you've had time to think and you've crafted that space into your schedule.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is this whole idea that I learned from somebody else or I got from somebody else, where I'm taking one day a week.
Mm-hmm.
And some weeks it's not even the full day, it's 4 to 6 hours, which I'm realizing isn't enough. But getting away for a whole day to think and process at a deeper level for what's going on in the business, the strategy, and everything else, and getting away from um, the repetitive needs of being in meetings, giving answers, solving problems. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if there's one thing you can guarantee in any business is the higher up you get in business, whether the higher up you get in a position or the larger the organization grows, you can guarantee that there are more problems.
Yeah.
That's part of the job
Right.
is
Chief problem solver.
yeah. And so how do you get away from that? It was introduced by a gentleman who runs about $1 billion a year company, or a company worth $1 billion in the mining and a whole bunch of like 35 different companies. He's out of Australia. And what's interesting is he grew a company from nothing to $1 billion in about 18 years. And in today's world, that might not be as impressive. It's still impressive.
Pretty impressive.
Part of what kept him sane was about 30%, about 8 or 9 years into that, or 5 years into it, he started learning I have to have a day away where I'm thinking, I'm studying, he's even praying, which is part of what I'm adding to it is like, okay, how do I think about everything I'm doing in the company, what we're doing strategically, and pray about it, talk to God about it, and integrate our faith. Those kind of things are really important. And then when we look at leadership development and we look at judgment and everything else, one of the things we see when we've had deeper conversations in the community we work with on good judgment, and how do you evaluate judgment, is that strategic military leaders who have had amazing strategic successes were also known as people who were always engaged in war, especially World War II. They were always engaged in all these different things they had to do. They were working 12, 14-hour days, easy. They weren't always getting all the sleep they wanted. But what they managed to do is they managed to get away a couple of hours a day and just, even if it was walking outside of wherever they were staying,
Mm-hmm.
just being alone. And nobody was allowed to talk to them. Nobody was allowed to bug them. Their
Yeah.
assistants weren't allowed to bring problems to them. And they had a process where they went, I am going to get away and think. And it is actually in those deeper moments where we're evaluating and thinking about our process that there's a certain amount of rest that happens in the brain. And there's a certain amount of clarity and success that can happen because there are strategies and solutions to problems, complex problems that are hidden. And unless we slow down and take time to really churn the deep waters, we won't see what's there. We won't see problems. We don't just snap all the time. And we see it. There's a 90% failure rate of businesses within 10 years. There's a 4% of all companies that survive make it to $1 million a year in gross revenue. And the numbers just dive down from there, going to 10 million and above. You've got all this proof, and then that says you need this, and that this success is challenging. And then you have all these leaders who believe that they're the unique one in the bunch that's going to change everything, and they don't have to apply any of this.
Yeah.
So I think the power of rest is critical for being successful in business and being able to thrive and everything else, and then having enough left over to enjoy the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because you and I, we don't live to work. We work and we don't work to live, which are the two sayings in the midst of it. It is, for us, it's a both and. We absolutely believe work is important and valuable and a critical thing in life and in our faith. But also, it's not the only thing, and it's not the thing that drives us.
Right.
Finding that balance is important, and disciplining yourself to rest is hard.
Indeed it is.
All that said, it's important.
And it's hard.
And it's hard.
But paying attention to it, right? Making sure that there's choices that you're making and you're being intentional about making choices that lead you on a path that helps you be somebody who can be strategic and can do all the things that you need to do as a leader, because you're taking care of yourself and longer term have that ability to live into what you're trying to achieve.
And with the folks listening today and watching today, I think this is the important part of the discussion. The thing to leave is consider this as a discipline that will actually help you grow your business, your personal life, your own leadership ability, and you'll actually turn more work from toil into labor.